What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Weer, and today we are going to talk about a brand new horror movie called Evil Dead Rise. And of course, when I say Evil Dead, you know that this is part of the Evil Dead franchise that's been going on for a long time. We go all the way back to Evil Dead 1, then we had Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead Army of Darkness, which was more of a comedy than anything else, and then we had Evil Dead in 2013, which I absolutely love, and then it went back more towards its roots with Ash vs. Evil Dead in a TV series that I've seen most of, and then now we get Evil Dead Rise. So going to this movie, I wasn't sure exactly how much information you were going to need to know from those previous entries. Now, I can confirm that you don't need to know anything from those previous entries into this franchise because this movie is a hard reboot. Evil Dead Rise stands on its own. You don't need to know any of the previous lore. They basically cover everything in this movie. But do they do it well? And is it a good movie? Those are the questions I have when I go into a movie. And leaving this movie, I was torn, and so I gave it a night like I usually do. And now I'm here to do my review. So let's get into my review for Evil Dead Rise. I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna leave it in.
Mom? Mommy's with the maggots now.
What will be. And so, guys, Evil Dead Rise is written and directed by Lee Cronin, and it stars Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, who's the mother of a small family living in an apartment building in LA. And you heard me right there, I said apartment building and LA, not cabin in the woods. Usually these movies take place in a cabin in the woods, so people are cut off from society, but in this movie they're living in an apartment building that's about to be condemned, so there's not a lot of people still living there. There's a few people on their floor, but not a lot of people. And then on top of that, an earthquake hits LA, and so now they are cut off from society, and they are free to accidentally allow the Evil Dead to rise, inhabit the mother, and then she starts killing everybody. So it's kind of like they took the cabin in the woods elements and put them into this apartment building, and that worked for me. I enjoyed that. And that's basically the setup I can give you for this movie. If that sounds like a fun concept to you, well, you should go check this movie out in theaters, because we should support watching these things in theaters so that it doesn't all just go to our streaming platforms and we never leave our houses again, because that's what they want to do, and we shouldn't support that. With that said, let's get into my likes and my dislikes for this movie. First thing I really liked about this movie is the opening of this movie, which is actually something I said in my Renfield review. So something about the openings right now. They're doing well in April. No, they really are, though. The opening of this movie actually takes place at a cabin in the woods, which is where I personally prefer this franchise after seeing this movie. That's not a detriment to this movie. We'll get to my dislikes in a little while. I just prefer the cabin in the woods element. It's less stuff you have to sort of make happen, less convenient things that need to happen. Like, you're already cut off from society. So this movie actually does open at a cabin in the woods, and I won't go into any details, but it's pretty brutal what happens there, and I really liked what happened in that opening scene. Next thing I really liked are the characters in this movie. You know, I'm not a huge fan of watching kid actors on the screen. I've just never been a huge fan. They're either not developed enough or just I don't buy them in their current situation. And then when you throw a horror element in there, it's like, all right, are these kids really going to sell me on being scared or standing up to whatever the evil is in that movie? Like, a lot of the times it just doesn't come off as legitimate to me. However, in this movie, every actor, every character, I feel like was picked perfectly because all of the actors and actresses worked for me in this movie, and the look of those people, my God. After something happens to a character and they get all undead, they look great, especially the lead character, Ellie. Her makeup, her effects, all of that just looks so good and so terrifying. Like, if that showed up at my doorstep, I would be scared. So I liked the visuals of this movie of all of the different characters, and especially when they became undead, or I guess in these movies they're called deadites. Although, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, did they even say the word deadites in this movie? I don't think they did. All right, moving on to my next like. And the next like I have for this movie would be the Carnage candy. If you're there for it, this movie's got it in spades. This movie gives you all of those things that you go to an Evil Dead for, whether it's how they get brutally murdered or who's doing the brutal murder. You've got a good amount of gore in this movie and a good amount of bugs and just vomit and things like that. So this movie lives up to that Evil Dead name. It really does. And if you're there for the carnage, it's got it. It's got so much of it. And finally, the last like I'm gonna throw in here is a little thing called Staphany. And I'm not gonna tell you what that is. If you've seen the movie, you know, and if you haven't seen it, you gotta see it to know. But Staphany is a standout. I lied, there's actually one more like I have for this movie. There's an homage they do to The Shining, which is perfect. And I just want to throw that out there. So just that moment with an elevator and the blood, it works for me. The biggest dislike I have for this movie is the plot feels forced. Like there's a lot of convenient things that happen in order to get the Evil Dead to rise. And you're coming off a series where the concept is, hey, we go to this cabin in the woods to have something happen or have an enjoyable experience, whatever the case may be. I'm at this cabin in the woods, and oh, I found this old book. Let me read from it real quick. Whoa, that raised the dead. And that's what kicks off the Evil Dead in each of those movies. However, in this movie, a lot of convenient things have to happen. You have to have this apartment building where there's not a lot of people. Then you have to have this massive earthquake hit LA, which has nothing to do with the Evil Dead, which again, didn't really make a lot of sense, but okay. So this earthquake hits LA, and because of the earthquake hitting LA, a room is uncovered where the kids go find not only the Book of the Dead, but some recordings which have someone reading the Book of the Dead, because of course those kids aren't going to know Latin and they're not going to know how to translate those words. So they find this recording that they will then play later to raise the dead. And again, it's just sort of convenient thing after convenient thing. The boy turns out to be someone who's a record/DJ enthusiast, so when he finds these records, he's able to play them. But again, they had to line these things up, and they're all just so very convenient. Now, I know we go to Evil Dead mostly for the kills and how scary does it look, and how are they going to end this thing in a brutal bloodbath, and they do. So I know that's why we go to most of these movies, but it would be nice if the plot just wasn't as convenient. That's how it felt to me. Like the whole time I was watching this movie, I saw something happen, and I was like, that's a setup for later. Somebody talked about their shotgun, I was like, that's a setup for later. Somebody talked about a work truck, I was like, chainsaw is going to be in the work truck. Like, there's convenient, and there's the movie. That's so very convenient, and I don't know, it just took away from my overall experience of the movie. The other big dislike I have for this movie is how they wrapped this thing up. The ending, the final act, it just didn't work for me. I really liked the carnage that they had in the apartment building and trying to stay away from them. At one point, they lock the mother outside of the apartment and she's just banging her head on the door. Like, that stuff worked for me. That was creepy. She was looking in the little apartment door eye hole the whole time and just looked scary. Like, that worked for me. But when it got to the ending and how they were going to beat these things, it just turned into gore for the sake of gore on top of sort of a weak ending. Like, they did something that I've not seen these movies do where, spoiler here, I guess I'll throw up a little alert, but the end monsters just all kind of form together. And because they form together, there's arms, legs everywhere, and it just kind of looked like something out of a Resident Evil movie. Like, that's what it felt like. And I was like, wait a minute, am I watching Resident Evil or am I watching Evil Dead? I'll take the spoiler alert down now. But yeah, that is the biggest issue I had with the movie, is just that ending, how they wrapped it up, and then what they did with that final monster. It just didn't work for me. Overall, I will say that if you're in this movie for the carnage, if you're in this movie for the gore, the guts, the blood, how they're going to get killed, the little cheese grater scene, like if you're in it for that, then you're going in, you're having an enjoyable time. You'll walk out of this movie going, oh, this was a lot of fun. If you're in it for anything else, if you want a deeper plot, if you want these characters to mean anything to you by the time you leave, you're not going to get it here. You're also not going to get a satisfying ending. At least I didn't. And maybe you will, but I didn't get a very satisfying ending to this movie. Just didn't work for me personally, which is disappointing because I had a lot of hope going into this movie. I was like, this might be my favorite movie this month. But no, this movie ends up kind of falling flat toward the end of the movie. I'm not sure where I'll rank this. I'll know that in a week or so after I see a few more movies. But Evil Dead Rise, those are my thoughts. That's my review. I'm not saying don't go see this movie. I'm not saying this is a bad movie in any way, because I think this movie delivers on the things the franchise promises. I just wish there was a little more substance there, and I wish it made me care about the characters a little more. Those are my gripes. Those are my thoughts. Guys, if you enjoyed this review, go ahead and put your comments in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about it. Maybe you loved it. Maybe you were there for the carnage and that's why you loved it. And that's great. But if you were there for a little bit more and you feel like I do, I'd like to know those thoughts as well. So throw all your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. If you could, give me a quick like on this video because it helps the channel out and I would really appreciate that. And finally, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure you do that because I got a lot of content coming your way. There's a few more movies coming out in April that I want to see before I do a final April ranking. So if I get the chance, I will go check those out this week. With all that said, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Alright guys, we made it to the end of my Evil Dead movie review video. If you're still watching, I appreciate you, and if you want to watch more of my content, well, up there I've got all of my Blu-ray updates. That's where I talk about all the different Blu-rays I have in my collection. Pretty soon I'm going to do like a full-on every single movie I have in my collection video, so be on the lookout for that. And then right there I've got all my 2023 reviews. That's everything I've seen so far this year. Go ahead and check that out. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.